For years, my entire salary vanished into my mother's account, a supposed duty. But when my wife investigated, she unearthed a shattering secret. My vanished brother was alive and in prison, funded by my money. The sound of my wife Sarah's fork clattering against her plate was louder than a gunshot in the tense silence of our dining room. My mother, Eleanor, didn't even flinch. She was too busy scraping the last of the coq au vin from the serving dish into one of the 3 Tupperware containers she'd brought with her. As always. "It's a bit rich, isn't it?" Sarah said, her voice dangerously low. She wasn't talking about the food. I shot her a look, a silent plea to just let it go. Not tonight. Tonight was our anniversary, or it was supposed to be. Before the telltale sound of a key in our front door announced the arrival of an uninvited and yet somehow expected guest. My mother finally looked up, dabbing her lips with a napkin she'd criticized for not being linen. "What was that, dear? Did you say something about the chicken? It was a little heavy on the wine, but passable. For a Tuesday." It was a Friday, our 7th anniversary, to be exact. The bottle of wine she was critiquing was a $90 Bordeaux I had bought specifically for the occasion. What was left of it was now sloshing around in the Tupperware with the chicken and pearl onions. "I just have a question, Eleanor," Sarah said, her knuckles white as she gripped her wine glass. I could see the dam of her patience cracking, and I knew a flood was coming. "It's something I've been wondering for a while now." My mother sighed, a theatrical, long-suffering sound she had perfected over decades. It was the sound of a martyr being asked to carry a slightly heavier cross. "Yes, Sarah. What is it?" I tried to intervene. "Honey, let's not—" "No, Alex." Sarah cut me off, her eyes locked on my mother. "I want to know. You see, every month for the last 4 years, Alex has transferred his entire salary to you, every single cent. He works 40, sometimes 50 hours a week as a senior graphic designer, and that money goes directly into your bank account to help you, to make sure you're comfortable and have everything you need since Dad passed." My mother's face hardened. "It's what a good son does. It's his duty. He made a promise to his father." This was her trump card, the one she played whenever her position was challenged. My father, on his deathbed, had made me promise to take care of her. At the time, in my grief-stricken haze, I'd have promised him the moon. What it translated to, in my mother's interpretation, was a lifetime of indentured servitude. My salary was just the start. "I'm not questioning his duty," Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. "I'm questioning the logistics. You receive a full-time professional salary every month. A salary that, by the way, is more than enough to cover your mortgage, your bills, your groceries, and a very comfortable lifestyle. My salary pays for our mortgage, our bills, our groceries. I'm happy to do it because I love my husband. But here's my question, Eleanor. If you have all that money, my husband's entire income, why do you still come here 3 times a week to eat our food?" The air crackled. My mother placed the lid on the last Tupperware with a sharp snap. She stood up, her small frame radiating indignation. "I have never, in all my life, been so insulted," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. "I come here to see my son, to make sure he's being fed properly. He looks so thin. And this is the thanks I get? Accusations? You've turned him against me, you ungrateful girl." She didn't wait for a response. She grabbed her purse and her containers of our anniversary dinner and marched to the door. "I'll see myself out. Alex, call me tomorrow. We need to talk about the influence your wife is having on you." The door slammed shut, leaving behind a silence thick with resentment and the lingering smell of her overpowering perfume. I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. I turned to Sarah, ready to launch into my usual routine. Placating, apologizing for my mother, promising to talk to her. But the look on Sarah's face stopped me cold. There was no anger there anymore. There was just resolution. "I can't do this anymore, Alex," she said quietly, her eyes welling up with tears she refused to let fall. "This isn't a marriage. It's a 3-person financial arrangement where we're the ones going broke. I looked at our accounts today. After I pay the mortgage and the car payment next week, we'll have less than $300 to last us the rest of the month. Meanwhile, your mother is getting over $5,000 tax-free deposited into her account. I know, honey, I know it's hard, I started, reaching for her hand. I'll talk to her. We can work out a budget, maybe reduce the amount. She pulled her hand away. No more talking, no more budgets. I'm done. We're done with this arrangement. The question isn't if it's going to stop. The question is why it was ever necessary in the first place. Where is all that money going, Alex? I just stared at her, my mind blank. What do you mean? It goes to her bills, her living expenses. Does it? She challenged, her voice dropping to a whisper. Her house has been paid off for 15 years. Dad had a great pension and a life insurance policy that I know for a fact she cashed out. She drives a 10-year-old car. She wears clothes from a decade ago. She doesn't travel. She doesn't have any expensive hobbies. And she eats here, for free, constantly. So I'll ask you again, where is the money going? The question hung in the air between us, a terrifying abyss I'd spent 4 years actively avoiding. I had no answer. I had just blindly transferred the money, month after month, because it was easier than dealing with her guilt trips and her emotional blackmail. Sarah watched me, her expression a mixture of pity and frustration. She let out a long, slow sigh and walked over to the sideboard, picking up her laptop. She opened it and turned it to face me. On the screen was a spreadsheet meticulously detailed with columns for income, known expenses, and a third huge column simply labeled unaccounted for. The final number in that column made my stomach drop. Over the past 4 years, it was well into the 6 figures. I'm not just guessing, Alex, she said, her voice firm. I've been tracking this. I needed to understand. At first, I thought maybe she had a gambling problem or a secret debt, something tragic, but that didn't feel right. She took a deep breath, her gaze meeting mine, and I knew whatever she was about to say would change everything. So 2 months ago, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, I did something you're not going to like. I took $1,000 from our emergency savings, and I hired a private investigator. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. A private investigator. I stared at her, the blood draining from my face. It felt like she'd just confessed to an affair. It was a betrayal of a different kind, but it cut just as deep. She had gone behind my back, taken our money, and sicked a stranger on my own mother, my grieving, widowed mother. You did what? My voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, how could you? She's my mother. She's an old woman. What did you think he was going to find? A secret meth lab in her basement? A collection of stolen jewels? I was trying for sarcasm, but it came out as a desperate, panicked plea. I needed this to be a joke, a horribly miscalculated, anniversary-ruining joke. Sarah didn't flinch. She closed the laptop and set it back on the sideboard, her movements calm and deliberate. It was the calm that scared me the most. I did it because I was tired of watching our future get drained away into a black hole, Alex. I did it because you refused to open your eyes. I needed answers, and this was the only way to get them. Answers to what? I shot back, my voice rising. She's lonely. She misses Dad. She buys things to make herself feel better. I don't know. It's her money. I give it to her. It is not her money. Sarah's voice cracked like a whip, silencing me instantly. It is your money. It is our money. It's the money that was supposed to be a down payment on a bigger house. It's the money for the kids we keep putting off having because we can't afford it. It's the money for the vacation we haven't taken in 7 years. It is our life, Alex, and she is siphoning it away, and you are letting her. I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. Every word was a hammer blow of truth I had spent years avoiding. I knew she was right. I just didn't want to admit it. Admitting it meant admitting I had failed. Failed her. failed myself, and failed the promise to my father by letting it be twisted into this farce. What did he find? I asked. The fight gone out of me. My voice was muffled by my hands. Please, just tell me. Sarah walked over and knelt in front of me. She gently pulled my hands away from my face, forcing me to look at her. Her eyes were full of a sad, tired love. He followed her for 2 weeks, she began softly. Her routine is mostly what you'd expect. She goes to the grocery store, but the PI noted she rarely buys more than a carton of milk and a loaf of bread. She goes to the library. She visits her friend Carol on Wednesdays, all very normal. A small, pathetic sliver of hope rose in my chest. See, there's nothing. You wasted $1,000, Sarah. Let me finish, she said, her grip on my hands tightening slightly. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork, her routine changes. On those days, she drives 20 minutes to the next town over, to a small independent post office. She never goes to the 5 blocks from her house. My brow furrowed. Why would she do that? For privacy, Sarah said. At the post office, she has a P.O. box, and from that post office, she mails a package. Always on Tuesday, always on Thursday. The PI said they're large, heavy-looking boxes, priority shipping insured. My mind raced, grasping for a rational explanation. Maybe she's selling stuff online? Like Dad's old tool collection or something? Sarah shook her head slowly. The pity in her eyes was almost unbearable. Alex, your mother still calls you to figure out how to work the television remote. She isn't running an eBay store. And besides, the packages aren't going to dozens of different buyers. They're all going to the same address, every single one. The room felt like it was tilting. The air was getting thin. What address? Who is she sending them to? The PI, his name is Mr. Davies. He's good at his job. He said it was tricky, but one day my mother was flustered, arguing with the clerk about the insurance cost, and he was able to get a clear photo of the shipping label with his phone. She paused, taking a deep breath, as if bracing herself for my reaction. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine, a primal certainty that I was not going to like the answer. This was it. The secret behind the missing money, the late-night visits for food, the endless emotional manipulation. It was all about to come crashing down. Who, Sarah? I pressed, my voice hoarse. Who is she sending our money to? Sarah's eyes locked on mine, and she delivered the final devastating blow. The name on the shipping label, she said, her voice clear and steady, leaving no room for doubt, was Michael. Michael. My brother. My older brother, Michael, who had supposedly walked out of our lives 15 years ago after a fight with my father, so catastrophic, so vile, that my parents told me he was dead to them. Michael, the black sheep, the ghost we never ever spoke of. And the address, she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper as she twisted the knife, was the state penitentiary in North Carolina. The world went silent. It was that profound, ringing silence you get after an explosion, where all you can hear is the rush of your own blood, Michael. The name echoed in the hollow chambers of my memory, a ghost from a life I'd almost convinced myself was a dream. State penitentiary. The two phrases crashed together in my head, a nonsensical, impossible pairing. No, I said, shaking my head, a reflexive denial. No, that's not possible. Michael. They said he moved to Oregon, started a new life. They said they never wanted to see him again. They lied, Alex, Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm, pulling me back from the brink of denial. Your mother has been lying to you for years. I stood up, pacing the dining room like a caged animal. My hands went to my hair, pulling at the roots. The perfectly set anniversary table, the half-eaten gourmet meal, the expensive wine, it all seemed like a grotesque parody of a normal life. Our life wasn't normal. It was a lie. Built on a foundation of secrets I was now realizing ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. Why, I whispered, turning to face her. Why would she lie about something like that? Why would she make me think my own brother was just gone? Because that's what she does, Sarah said, standing up to meet me. She manipulates. She controls the narrative. The story of the prodigal son who ran off and broke his parents' hearts was better for her than the truth. It got her more sympathy. It made your father's final wish for you to take care of her carry more weight. It all started clicking into place, a horrifying cascade of puzzle pieces. My father's bitterness in his final years, my mother's constant, vague references to family disappointments, the way she would shut down any attempt to reminisce about our childhood if Michael's name came up. And the money. My God, the money. It wasn't for her. It was never for her. It was for him. What did he do? I asked, the question tasting like ash in my mouth. Why is he in prison? Sarah went back to her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Mr. Davies found that out too. Once he had the name and the location, it wasn't hard. It's a matter of public record. She turned the screen towards me again. There it was, in stark black and white on the state's Department of Corrections website. Inmate number 734B21. Name, Michael Thomas Evans. A mugshot stared back at me. It was him, but not him. The familiar dark hair and the shape of his eyes were there, but they were buried under 15 years of hardship. He was gaunt. His face was a roadmap of anger and regret, and his eyes were empty. I scanned the details below the photo. Conviction, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon. Sentence, 25 years. Eligible for parole in... My breath hitched. Eligible for parole in 6 months. Armed robbery, I choked out. Assault? Michael wouldn't... He wasn't like that. He was stupid sometimes. He got into fights at school, but this... People change, Alex. Or maybe we just never knew who he really was, Sarah said softly. The point is, your mother has been supporting him. For years, not just with packages. Davies did some more digging. He thinks she's funding his commissary account, paying his legal fees for parole hearings, probably putting money into a fund for when he gets out. The food in my stomach turned to lead. The coq au vin, the wine, it all threatened to come back up. My entire salary, my sacrifice, my wife's sacrifice. It hadn't been for my grieving mother's comfort. It had been to support my violent, felonious brother in prison, the brother I was told to forget. And the food, I said, the realization dawning on me. She comes here to eat, so she doesn't have to spend any of the money on herself. She saves every penny for him. It was so perfectly, diabolically manipulative. She wasn't just taking my money, she was making me feed her too, all while playing the part of the poor, lonely widow. A hot, white-hot rage I hadn't felt since I was a teenager began to boil in my veins. It was a fury so pure, it eclipsed everything else. The shock, the grief, the confusion. It was directed at one person, my mother. I have to see her, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Right now. Alex, what are you going to do? Sarah asked, a note of caution in her voice. It's late. Maybe we should sleep on this. Make a plan. No, I said, grabbing my keys from the hook by the door. No more plans, no more waiting. I've been living in the dark for 15 years. She's going to turn on the lights for me. Tonight. I didn't wait for Sarah to argue. I was out the door and in my car before she could stop me. The 10-minute drive to my mother's house felt like an eternity. Every traffic light, every stop sign was a personal affront. My mind was a whirlwind of betrayal. The promise to my father now felt like a curse, a tool she had expertly wielded to make me an unwitting accomplice in her grand deception. I screeched to a halt in her driveway, not even bothering to pull in properly. The lights were on in her living room. I didn't knock. I used the key she insisted I keep on my key ring. For emergencies, dear, and stormed inside. She was on the phone, sitting in her armchair, a half-empty mug of tea on the table beside her. She looked up, startled, as I burst in. Alex, what on earth? You nearly gave me a heart attack, she exclaimed, her hand flying to her chest. I'm on the phone. You can't just... "Hang it up," I said, my voice low and shaking with rage. Her eyes widened. She had never heard me use that tone with her before. "I beg your pardon?" I said, "Hang up the phone, now." She stammered something to the person on the other end and quickly ended the call. She stood up, her usual air of matriarchal authority kicking in. "Alexander, what is the meaning of this? You come barging into my house at this hour." "Cut the act, Mom," I snapped. "The show is over. I know everything." A flicker of something, fear, panic, crossed her face before it was replaced by a mask of confused innocence. "Know everything? What are you talking about? Has that wife of yours been putting more nonsense in your head? Don't you dare bring Sarah into this," I warned, taking a step closer. The smell of her perfume, the same one from our house, filled my nostrils and made me feel sick. "This is about you. It's about your lies. It's about Michael." The name dropped into the room like a stone. The color drained from her face. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother speechless. The mask was gone. All that was left was a cornered old woman, her secrets laid bare. "How?" she whispered. "How did you find out?" "It doesn't matter how," I said, my voice trembling. "What matters is why. 15 years, Mom. You let me believe my brother disappeared. You took every penny I earned, money my wife and I have bled for, and you sent it to a felon in a state penitentiary. I want to know why." She sank back into her chair, looking small and frail. The fight seemed to have gone out of her. She stared at her hands, which were now trembling in her lap. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were filled with tears. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of defiance. "You wouldn't have understood," she said, her voice raspy. "You were always the good one, the responsible one. You wouldn't have helped if you knew the truth." "Try me," I challenged. She took a shaky breath, gathering herself. "He didn't do it, Alex," she said, her voice gaining a feverish intensity. "Your brother is innocent. He was framed. That money, all of it, it wasn't just for his commissary. It was for the investigator, for the only person who believes me and is trying to prove his innocence." I stared at her, my rage momentarily replaced by utter disbelief. An investigator. She was paying an investigator. My money, intended for her well-being, was funding a long-shot PI to free my supposedly innocent, armed robber brother. "Who?" I demanded. "Who is this investigator you've been giving my entire salary to for 4 years?" My mother's face transformed, a strange, almost beatific smile spreading across her lips. It was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen on her. "His name is Richard," she said, her voice filled with a reverence that chilled me to the bone. "And you already know him. He was your father's best friend." "Richard. Uncle Richard." The name hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. Richard Hemlock had been my dad's best friend since high school. He was at every birthday party, every Christmas dinner. He gave the eulogy at my father's funeral, his voice thick with what I had thought was genuine grief. He'd been a police detective for 30 years before retiring a few years before Dad died. He was the one who pulled me aside after the funeral, put a heavy hand on my shoulder, and told me, "Your dad's biggest worry was your mother. You have to step up, Alex. You're the man of the house now." He was the one who had reinforced the idea of my duty. "Richard," I repeated, the name tasting foreign and foul. "Richard is the investigator? He was a cop, Mom, not a PI, and he's retired. He spends his winters in Florida." "He has contacts," she insisted, her voice rising with a desperate, frantic energy. "He never believed Michael was guilty. He's been working on it ever since the trial, quietly. Pro bono at first, out of respect for your father. But this kind of work, it's expensive. You need to pay informants, travel, file paperwork. The money you give me, Alex, it's not for me. It's for justice. It's to bring my innocent boy home." The room began to spin. Nothing made sense. My father, who had supposedly disowned Michael, had let his best friend secretly work to exonerate him? And Richard, A man I'd respected my whole life, a pillar of law and order, was complicit in this massive, life-altering deception? He had looked me in the eye, year after year, knowing he was a party to the lie that was draining my entire life away. "Dad knew about this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Dad knew Richard was doing this?" "Of course not," my mother scoffed, as if I'd asked the most ridiculous question in the world. "Your father. He was a proud man. He couldn't bear the shame. It was easier for him to pretend Michael didn't exist than to face the truth that the justice system had failed his son. Richard promised him he would look into it, but your father made him swear never to speak of it again. It was a secret they took to the grave. Richard only told me after the funeral. So my dad wasn't in on it. A tiny, insignificant part of me felt a flicker of relief, but it was quickly extinguished by the sheer scale of the betrayal that remained. My mother and my father's best friend had conspired against me. They had built this narrative, this cage of obligation, and locked me inside it. "So, you've been giving Richard my money?" I struggled to wrap my head around it. $5,000 a month? For 4 years? Mom, that's almost $250,000. What kind of investigation costs that much? What has he possibly found? "Breakthroughs," she said, her eyes shining with a zealot's light. "He's found breakthroughs. The witness who identified Michael, the one who worked at the liquor store he supposedly robbed. Richard found out he had a gambling problem. He thinks someone paid him off to lie. He's been trying to track down the man who he thinks is the real culprit, someone who held a grudge against Michael. He's close, Alex, I can feel it. Your money is what's going to finally clear his name." It sounded like something from a bad TV movie, a gambling addict witness, a shadowy, real culprit. It was a fantasy, a $250,000 fantasy that my wife and I had paid for. I looked around my mother's immaculate house. Nothing out of place, nothing new. Everything was a prop in her stage play of the grieving, struggling widow. Even the Tupperware containers of our anniversary dinner sitting on her kitchen counter were part of the costume. She didn't need our food. She needed to maintain the illusion. "I want to see the proof," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I want to see the case files, the evidence, the bank statements showing the transfers to Richard. Everything." Panic flared in her eyes again. I don't have them. Richard keeps all the files. It's sensitive material. And I give him the money in cash. It's better that way. No trail." "No trail," I repeated, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping my lips. "Of course. How convenient." "You don't believe me," she said, her voice dropping, her expression turning to one of deep, profound hurt. The martyr was back. "After all I've sacrificed, after all I've done to hold this family together, you think I would lie about something like this? You think Richard, who loved your father like a brother, would deceive you?" "Yes," I said, the single word cutting through her performance. "That's exactly what I think, and I'm going to prove it. Give me his number, the one in Florida." She hesitated, chewing on her lip. "I don't know if I should. He doesn't like to be disturbed." "Give me the number, Mom. Or I swear the next call you get will be from my lawyer, and the monthly deposits will stop tonight." The threat worked. Her resolve crumbled. She scribbled a number on a notepad and pushed it across the table to me. I snatched it, my hands shaking with adrenaline. I didn't wait. I pulled out my phone and dialed, right there in front of her. My heart hammered against my ribs. I was about to confront the man who was either a saint secretly working for justice or the most duplicitous con artist I had ever met. The phone rang 3 times, then a familiar, gravelly voice answered. "Hello? Richard? It's Alex Evans." There was a pause, a beat of silence that stretched for an eternity. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the surprise, the calculation. "Alex, my boy, what a surprise. How are you? How's your mother holding up?" His voice was a smooth, practiced balm of false concern. It made my skin crawl. "We need to talk," I said, cutting him off. "About Michael." Another pause, this one heavier. "Ah," he said, his voice losing some of its warmth. "I see. Your mother told you." "She told me a story," I clarified, "about an innocent man and a secret investigation funded by my life savings. I'm calling for the facts. I want to know what you've been doing with my money for the past 4 years." He let out a long, weary sigh, the sound of a patient man dealing with a hysterical child. "Son, it's complicated. It's not something we can discuss over the phone. There are sensitive elements, people who could get hurt." "I'm done with secrets, Richard," I said, my voice rising. "You've got one chance to tell me the truth. Where is the money?" He was quiet for a moment. I could hear the faint sound of ocean waves in the background, a life of leisure, funded by me. The thought made me want to smash the phone against the wall. Finally, he spoke again, his voice low and serious. "All right, Alex, you're right. You deserve to know. The story your mother told you, it's not the whole truth. It's much, much bigger than that. Michael's case is just the tip of the iceberg." He took a deep breath. "The money wasn't for an investigation. Not really. It was for protection." "Protection?" I asked, confused. "Protection from what?" "From who?" he corrected. "When Michael got arrested, he didn't just rob a liquor store. He stumbled into something much bigger. He saw something he shouldn't have involving some very dangerous people connected to the police force. They framed him to keep him quiet." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying my life was in danger," Richard said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I knew too much. I had to retire, disappear. The money you've been sending? It's not for me, son. I don't see a dime of it. I just facilitate the transfer. It's blackmail money. It's the price of keeping me, your mother, and even you safe." The story was spiraling, getting wilder and more unbelievable with every sentence. Corrupt cops, blackmail, a secret conspiracy. It was the desperate, rambling plot of a man caught in a lie, throwing anything at the wall to see what would stick. My mother was staring at me, her eyes wide, hanging on my every word, completely buying into this new, even more dramatic narrative. She wanted to believe it. She needed Michael to be a victim, a pawn in a grand chess game, not just a common criminal. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The rage had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. "You're lying," I said into the phone, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "There are no corrupt cops. There is no blackmail. There is only you and my mother and my money. I'm hanging up now, Richard, and I'm going to make one more call. To the police. The real police. We'll see how your story about corrupt cops holds up then." "Wait!" His voice was sharp, laced with genuine panic. The smooth, confident mask had finally dropped. "Alex, don't. You don't understand what you'd be starting. Think about your mother." "I am thinking about my mother," I said, looking directly at her. Her face was a mask of confusion and fear. "I'm thinking about how you've preyed on her grief and her love for her son to steal from mine. Goodbye, Richard." I ended the call before he could say another word and immediately blocked his number. The silence in the living room was deafening. My mother just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. "He's protecting us, Alex," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You can't call the police. You'll put us all in danger." "No, Mom," I said, my voice softening slightly. I sank onto the ottoman in front of her chair. The anger was gone, replaced by a profound, bottomless sadness. "He's not protecting us. He's a con man. A very, very good one. He was Dad's best friend. He knew everything. He knew Dad was ashamed of Michael. He knew you were desperate to believe Michael was innocent. And he knew that after Dad died, I was an emotional, grieving kid who would do anything he was told if it was framed as my duty." I pulled out my phone again, but I didn't dial 911. I opened my banking app. My fingers moved with a grim purpose. I found the recurring monthly transfer, $5,000, for 48 months. I tapped the screen. Cancel this transfer? The prompt asked. I pressed confirm. Then I went to Sarah's account and initiated a transfer, moving the bulk of my last paycheck, the one that had just cleared, into our joint savings, leaving only enough for gas. The well was dry, effective immediately. My mother watched my thumbs moving on the screen. She didn't need to ask what I was doing. She knew. The tears that had been welling in her eyes finally began to fall. "What have you done?" she sobbed. "Richard needs that money. Michael's parole hearing is in 6 months. He needs a lawyer. He needs a place to live." "He's a grown man, Mom. He made his choices, and he's served his time. When he gets out, he can get a job like everyone else," I said. "As for Richard, he's had $250,000 of my family's money. I'm sure he'll be fine on his Florida golf course." I stood up. "I'm going home to my wife. We're going to have to sell this house, Mom. You can't afford the property taxes without my income. We'll find you a nice small apartment. We'll help you move. We can have a real relationship, one that isn't based on lies and financial transactions. But the arrangement we had is over, for good." I walked out the door, not looking back. I didn't trust myself to. The drive home was a blur. When I walked through my own front door, Sarah was waiting, sitting on the sofa, her laptop open but untouched. She looked up at me, her face etched with worry. I didn't say a word. I just walked over to her, knelt down, and buried my face in her lap. I cried. I cried for the brother I'd lost twice, once to a lie and once to the truth. I cried for the father who died under the weight of a shame I never understood. I cried for the years my wife and I had sacrificed, the future we had put on hold. And I cried for the mother I loved, who was so lost in her own fiction that she couldn't see the reality of the damage she had caused. Sarah just held me, stroking my hair, letting me release 15 years of bottled-up grief and anger. When I was done, I sat up, my eyes raw and puffy. "It's over," I said, my voice hoarse. "I stopped the payments. It's all over." She gave me a watery smile and nodded. "I know," she said. "I was watching the bank account. I saw the transfer." She closed her laptop. "Good, now we can start over." The next few months were hard. My mother refused to speak to me for weeks. When she finally did, it was through a lawyer, contesting my decision. But without any written agreement, she had no case. Eventually, reality set in. We sold her big, empty house, and the profits were more than enough to set her up in a comfortable condo and create a trust fund that would pay her bills for the rest of her life, with nothing left over for imaginary investigators. The flow of cash was well and truly cut off. As for Richard, we never heard from him again. Sarah's PI did one last search and discovered he had sold his Florida condo a week after my call and disappeared. He was a ghost. 6 months later, on a Tuesday, my phone rang. It was an unlisted number from North Carolina. My heart stopped. I answered. "Alex?" The voice was rough, hesitant, but unmistakably familiar. It was Michael. "Yeah," I managed to say, "it's me. I got out this morning," he said. "Mom was there. She told me everything. About the money, about you and Sarah." There was a long pause. "She said the payment stopped. I wanted to say I'm sorry, man. I never asked her for that. I told her not to. But you know how she is." "Yeah," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "I know how she is. Listen, I'm not calling to ask for anything," he rushed to say. I needed you to hear it from me. What I did was stupid and wrong. I paid for it. I'm going to get a job, get my life straight. But I couldn't start that without telling you I'm sorry for what this all cost you. It wasn't a magic wand. It didn't erase the past 15 years, but it was a start. It was the truth. "Okay, Michael," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Okay." That night, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Sarah and I sat down to dinner in our own home, alone. There were no Tupperware containers, no uninvited guests, no tension hanging in the air. We opened a bottle of wine, not a $90 one, just a regular $10 bottle, but it tasted better than any I'd ever had. We talked about the future, about painting the spare room, about finally taking that vacation, about us. For the first time, our future felt like it was entirely our own. The ghosts had been exorcised. The debts, both real and imagined, had finally been paid.